Okay, this class is going to look at further impacts of agriculture on the environment. And this picture shows severe land erosion. And of course, one of the impacts of agriculture is soil erosion. So erosion is one of those impacts. And what we're going to look at, first of all, habitat destruction and loss of biodiversity. When we clear land for agriculture, there's going to be severe habitat destruction and loss of biodiversity. And one thing to notice, of course, is that the habitat destruction and loss of biodiversity will occur first, and then later on there'll be soil erosion, and therefore the soil will degrade over the next year. And water degradation will also occur following the land clearing. They won't occur simultaneously, but the water degradation and soil degradation will occur later on to this destruction of habitat and the loss of biodiversity. But then soil degradation. Uh, when you look at soil degradation, we must talk about erosion, acidification, and acidification occurs through the use of ammonium fertilizers, because NH4 plus is acidic. Salinization, that is when you irrigate land using river water or water from mains and so on, as this water contains dissolved mineral ions. Waterlogging. Waterlogging can also occur, and this will deplete a soil of nitrogen. Soil compaction. When you have heavy duty machines and so on, they can press the soil together. Monoculture, when you grow one crop alone. This can reduce soil fertility because the same crop uses the same ions all the time. It can also increase the number of plant pathogens. For example, if you grow plantain or bananas, you should plant the suckers some distance from where the parent plant was, because over time there's a buildup of roundworms close to the banana plants. So you need to plant it somewhere more distant. Waste reduction. Farms quite often produce a bit of waste. And water degradation, especially due to soil erosion. And also fertilizers, which can either pollute water, either by runoff or leaching. And discharge into coastal surface. Quite often the soil or fertilizers can be carried into the ocean, where they can damage coral reefs and that kind of thing. So, as I said, we'll start off with habitat loss. And clearing of land leads to habitat loss and a reduction in biodiversity. So the immediate consequence of land clearing is habitat loss, and therefore a reduction in biodiversity, since organisms lose the place in which they can live. And this can ultimately lead to extinction, because animals have less habitat where they can live. And if you clear all the land, then clearly there's no habitat, and organisms can easily become extinct. Following habitat loss, there'll be soil erosion. This will result in a decrease in water quality, because much of the soil ends up in water bodies, and a reduction in soil quality, since it's the topsoil which is being lost. And irrigation of land leads to soil salinization, and fresh water contains dissolved minerals, unlike rainwater, which is pure water. And when the water passes through the soil, the mineral ions stay there, so there'll be a build-up. And this occurs over many years, so you don't notice it at first. And if a soil becomes too salty, plants cannot absorb water because the water potential is too low. Remember, water moves from high water potential to low water potential. So I should say here, where was it? Um, if a plant becomes too salty, plants cannot absorb, let's see it now. So view. If a salt becomes too salty, plants cannot absorb water. Because the water potential of the soil is too low. Remember, water moves from high water potential to low water potential. And monoculture places a heavy demand on specific nutrients and encourages the growth of plant-specific pests. It therefore places a great strain on the farm ecosystem. And remember, the more complex an ecosystem is, the more stable it is. And basically, if you're just growing one crop, you have a very simple ecosystem, and it is therefore unstable. And it also requires a lot of input to maintain it. And remember, the more input you have into a farm, the less sustainable it is, basically. So a monoculture farm is therefore a very simple farm and highly unstable, and requires continued intervention from man to be maintained. So in other words, saying that monoculture is not sustainable. And then we have agricultural waste. What do we do with agricultural waste? One thing is that with some of the waste, we can find ways of utilizing it. And I think we need to do more and more of that. Coconut husk can be used to make coir. You can use it probably for a fuel even, burn it or mulch it. So there are things you can do with coconut shells rather than just allow them to decompose. So examples of agricultural waste include biodegradable remains from agricultural production, rice husks, straw corn cob stalk. I think you can use this to make for fuel, which is then used to make plastics with. You can sugarcane, bagasse and chash, coconut shell, um, animal remains. Well, also the fronds from coconut palms, which can use to make thatch and houses. Animal remains, unsold harvested produce. And agricultural waste is often burned, causing air pollution. It is sometimes dumped into water bodies, causing water pollution. For example, the Appleton refinery in St. Elizabeth dumped bagasse into the Black River, and if left, it accumulates and is unsightly and attracts rodents, cockroaches, which spread disease. But it also pollutes the river and can cause fish kills. Lots of fish suddenly die. However, most agricultural waste can be used and disposed of as a resource. So corn cobs can be used to manufacture plastics. Bagasse can be used to make board. Coconut husk can be used to make coir. So lots of these waste products can be used. And waste management is a method of handling waste so that accumulation is under control and its disposal does minimal harm to the environment and at the same time utilizes as much of the waste as possible. And then we have water degradation. Water can degrade as a result of erosion. This makes the water turbid and kills important microorganisms in the water. It can also change the existing ecosystem. If seawater becomes turbid, for example, it can kill coral reefs because the algae inside of the coral can't survive. The use of insecticides and pesticides. Um, these kill organisms in the water, and they can also be carcinogenic. And animal waste. These cause eutrophication and spread diseases. The water will become less drinkable and not fit for human consumption. And the water will eventually reach the sea, where it can kill coral reefs because the water is too turbid. It can also harm mangrove swamps and seagrass beds, which are important aquatic ecosystems. And of course, you can think of them providing ecosystem services. Mangrove swamps protect the land behind it from erosion, and they protect the reefs uh, in the sea, because otherwise the eroded land would go onto the sea and it would kill the coral reefs. So that buffer zone is very important. Soil compaction is caused by heavy machines. They encourage erosion and reduce soil fertility. And soil acidification is caused by inorganic fertilizers containing ammonium ions. Remember, ammonium ions are acidic. And waterlogging, which happens in the cultivation of rice, it can happen naturally with climate change, which causes flooding. Remember, with climate change, we get excessive rain at one point and then no rain at others. I think one issue here, as I've said before, is we need to store water more effectively because we know we're going to get more times when we have more drought and other times when we have excessive rainfall. So we need to find more ways of storing water. And monoculture encourages the growth of specific parasites, and also nutrients are moved to a greater extent, since different crops use different nutrients. And industrial agriculture tends to use monoculture. That's an example of industrial agriculture. And liquid waste, such as animal urine, sometimes feces, are a problem because they're mobile and need a means of containment. I suppose another thing about these is they also have an unpleasant smell, and therefore people are close to a nearby farm which produces these. They often complain about unpleasant smell, and so also they harbour flies and other insects, and perhaps even rodents. So we need to find a way of dealing with animal feces and urine. In agriculture, large amounts of wastewater can be produced that cause pollution if released into water bodies, causing disease and eutrophication. And they may also contain antibiotics and hormones. And water from fish can be used for hydroponics. I've mentioned this before, and we call it aquaponics. And that basically finishes this discussion.